Hello and welcome back. My name is Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. We're going to do another watercolor journal page. In our watercolor journals, I am going to be using my Bao Hong sketchbook. This is 100% cotton, 140-pound cold press paper in this journal. I paint on both sides of the pages. I'm going to be using a size 12 Princeton Aqua Elite brush, a round brush, but whatever size is comfortable for you for this project. I'm also using my Core Paints, QOR by Golden. These paints, just to make a little note about these, because I get this question a lot in the comments about when they go to look at Core Paints, they can't find the ones that come in this tin because they don't come together. So that's a common mistake. They come in tubes. So they come in tubes like this, and they come in a tin that looks like this, or maybe bigger than this. This one would have had 6 in it. So these tins come with the paints inside, and they usually have a little cardboard insert to hold them in place. You certainly could take that out and use this tin as a mixing palette. It's an enameled metal, so it would work just fine. I use them to store paints and travel with them and things like that. They're a nice little tin, but this one I got separately. So this I bought completely separately. It comes empty with the half pan pieces in it. These half pans are removable, so you can remove them and take them out. So if you had different half pan colors stored somewhere else, you wanted to swap them out, you could do that. But it has a great design or construction to it. I really like it. I take it with me on the go. It has a little handle underneath so you can hold it in your hand if you were like painting plein air outside. Like this, open it up and hold it on your palm. I never paint that way, but you could. So yeah, so I love this. Lots of mixing space in here on both sides. And the half pans are very generous. So I really like that. I don't have to fill them up very often. And this 11 milliliter tube size, so they come in different sizes. Some are 5 milliliter, some are 11. These, about a third of this, maybe a little more than a third, would fill a half pan in here. So you get 2.5 to 3 kind of fills of a half pan out of one of these tubes. So they last a really long time. And here's the difference in size. So this is a 5 milliliter tube and this is an 11 milliliter tube. So you can see the difference. Okay. So we're going to get started now. We're going to do a whimsical little folk art scene. Haven't done one in a while. I've only drawn 2 lines here. Just one little horizon line so I could place my sun. And then I use the inside of my tape roll to trace half sun slightly below the horizon line. I'm just going to lighten that up with my eraser. Highly recommend a kneaded eraser. I don't have mine right now. It's out in the other room. All of them are because I was drawing the other night. I forgot to bring them back into the painting studio. But I'm okay with this one because I'm just erasing a tiny little bit. All right, so we have our horizon line, we have our sun. We are going to use some very cool colors for this lower part, and then I'm going to put in the nice golden sun. So I picked these colors, one, because I like them together, blues and yellows, but it is April, as many of you know. Maybe if you're watching this at a later time, you wouldn't, but it is April right now, and it is still freezing here outside. We had another cold spell, and I spent 6 hours yesterday sitting outside at a trek meet in freezing rain. So that was lovely. And it's so cold, but the sun is shining today. It's so golden and beautiful, but it's still freezing. So this is going to represent that cold and warm, sunny golden glow, but that cold nature of what's going on outside right now. All right, so let's get started with, I'm going to start with the sun, and then we're going to add in our layers of blue and the sky. So let's start with a beautiful yellow we're going to use this Diarylide yellow or a Gamboge yellow would work. A nice warm yellow. I'm going to put my colors up here on the top. I just masked out this little section. Little color blobs. My sky is going to be a very light version of this cobalt teal. So those two colors are fun right next to each other. They actually give a warm, beachy feel. But then I'm going to come in with some blues. And I'm going to use a combination of this cerulean blue-gray. I'm going to use a little ultramarine. And I'm going to use some Payne's Gray to kind of mix in with those. All right, so let's get started now that we have our colors all outlined. So for the sun, I'm actually going to make the edges darkest. So I'm going to start with a nice juicy edge here. And then I'm going to rinse my brush off completely, and I'm going to just add some water in the center, and then I'm going to just touch the edge of this and start to invite in this color. So it's got a nice bright glow in the center. And if it works its way in too much, just clean off your brush, dry it off, and pull some of that color out. And you can always add a little more color to the edges. Oh, my edge over here got a little wonky. Whoops. And I'm kicking the camera. So we're just going to fix that so it's more perfectly rounded. There we go. All right, so that's step one. We have our beautiful sunshine in there. And then we're going to let that dry completely, because then we're going to do these layers down below and a layer of sky, light blue sky around it. All right, so you're going to have to let that dry completely, and then we'll get started on these next layers, because we're actually going to build from light to dark at the bottom. So I do want to start with my first layer completely light and then add layers on top to create darker and darker values. All right, so let it dry. We'll come back and we'll get started on the rest of it. All right, this is nice and dry. And now we're going to put in our light blue sky. So we're going to take this cobalt teal, but I'm going to lighten it up quite a bit. I want it to be a light and airy kind of mix. Oops, I got a little blue in my yellow and yellow in my blue. And that is not going to work well because they make green. So let's try that again. Cobalt teal, nice and watered down. And I just want to make sure to have enough to finish it all. All right, so this too, I'm going to start at the top and kind of work my way down towards the sun and around the sides here. And I am going to lighten it up as it gets kind of closer to the sun. And that'll give it an aura of its own. A little bit of a glow. And I'm still being really careful close to the edges of the sun because I don't want it to reactivate the paint and then start making green. So I'm just adding another layer. It was a little too light for me. You could have left it super light like that, but I'm adding another layer. I know it's going to dry even lighter, so I do want to see a little bit of this blue tone. I don't want it to be too washed out. There we go. All right, so we're gonna let that dry as well. Beautiful, bright, sunny. This is how the sky looks right now. It's coming in the window. I have sun in my eyes at this very moment. So much so that I had to block off part of the window so we didn't have a bright sunbeam kind of coming across our page. However, I was just outside with the dog and it does not feel as warm and sunny and lovely as my window would like to tell me it is outside. All right, so we got some ultramarine blue here. I did mix in a little cerulean with it, but it was so little you really can't tell. I just needed this whole mixing palette. All right, we're gonna water this down to be a nice light color. And I am gonna put this basically right across my sun. And then I'm just going to grade it down. I'm not going to worry about getting a perfect wash because I'm going to cover this up with more layers of hills and mountains kind of coming down as we add layers. So you are going to want to let this dry again. So this project does involve lots of drying time for each of the layers. If you have a hand dryer or a blow dryer, you can certainly use that to make it dry. I do try to encourage people to let things dry naturally for about a minute and then hit it with a heat gun or a blow dryer. So let this dry and we'll get started on our next few layers, and we're just going to build them one after another, letting them dry in between. All right, we're back. And you'll notice that I now have clips on my binder here. I love these binder clips. You can get a box of them for a couple of dollars, and they're really great when you're painting in sketchbooks to hold pages flat. Especially with this, as you paint projects with a lot of water or a lot of paint, you might get some bending or curving of the pages as they dry, but you can just clamp it down to the pages behind it, and you're good to go. And this is great when you have a sketchbook that doesn't lay completely flat also, that you can clip them down. So you'll see I also have, from our last project, the other pages clipped down so that it stays open and flat and I don't have anything kind of waving around while I'm trying to paint. All right, so let's move on to our next layer. Let's do some more. I'm going to add some cerulean to this. So cerulean and ultramarine I added together. And paint this all the way down. And you can get your layers as close to each other as you want, so you could make this even smaller if you wanted to. Kind of these gaps in between, and make lots and lots of little ones or bigger ones. Depends on how much time and patience you have. But each layer I'm going to build, I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Okay, let's let it dry and move on to the next. Here we go. We're back, nice and dry. Moving on to the next. This one I'm really not going to add much more paint. I added a little more ultramarine, but I'm just going to do another layer. And by virtue of doing another layer, you're going to be building two layers together, so it is going to be automatically darker. So I'm going to put another. And you can make them whatever shapes you want. You can have them be really flat. You can have them be really kind of jagged and mountainous. I'm just doing kind of a couple of wavy, bumpy hills here. All right, one more down. Maybe two more to go, I think. Maybe 2 or 3. All right, let's let it dry. Okay, we're back. I'm going to add a little bit more paint, so a little more ultramarine, a little more cobalt teal, and a bit of Payne's gray. So we're going to go even darker for this, almost a navy color. Beautiful. And go all the way down. And you can play with these layers too if you wanted to work on gradients and have it be really light towards the bottom of each of the sections versus this is kind of all flat. That can be really fun too and can produce like a glowing sensation or a feel. Time to let it dry. All right, one more layer on the bottom here, and I'm just adding more Payne's gray to this, so it's a really dark navy. What I would do differently as I'm looking at this, it feels a little lopsided this way. I would be a little more patient or paying attention to some of my layers and how they're kind of coming out. I would have made this a little more consistent with these other three. I like the spacing of these three. This one was a little big for me, but I don't want to go back now and like cram another layer in here. I feel like that'll just get sloppy. It is looking very ocean-esque to me also, as well as hilly, mountainy, but more like wavy ocean, which is fun. We are going to add another layer of kind of some framing foliage materials after we let this dry, but overall so far I really like it. Okay, so let's let that dry and we'll come back and add some more details to the top layer. All right, all of our layers are dry, and now because this one is whimsical and fun, we can do whatever we want. We can break rules. We don't have to worry about perspective or anything like that. I'm going to use more blue, ultramarine, and Payne's gray to make this really dark color here. And I switched to a smaller brush. I'm actually going to see, I'm going to use my Princeton, I think I have a Princeton Select here, size 3 brush, so a little bit smaller. And we're going to do some large kind of tall grasses and leafy trees to frame this sun in almost a silhouette. So let's do some tall grasses first. So just with the tip of my brush, and it almost looks like seaweed. This definitely can go either way with the nautical theme or the on land theme. All right, and then we're gonna kind of come up further. Actually, I'm gonna use an even smaller brush. I have this is like not even a name brand brush, but it's a size 2 or a 0 or a 2-0 detail brush to just make the stems that I'm going to add some little leaves to. I haven't decided if I'm going to let any of them cross the sun yet. I think I will let one or two. All right, so going back to my size 3 brush, let me pull up my sleeve here. We are going to make just tiny little leaves. I'm going to make them and then connect to them. And you might have to do a few, connect them, step back, see how you feel about it. So I'm using my tiny little brush to connect them. Feel free to turn your page, especially when you're doing little detail work like this. I'm not turning it just so you can see, continue to see what I'm doing, but it doesn't mean I'm not struggling to not turn my page. This is harder to do these details without kind of turning the page to me to be more comfortable to you. I'm going to thicken this just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to do just some more of that on this side and on this branch. We're going to speed that up a little bit because it might be a little tedious for you to watch me do that, but you certainly can sit and take your time and paint in all your sweet little leaves. All right, I'll see you at the end. All right, there we go. We have our little leaf details added. I think this one is super fun. Now, you could, to add an extra pop of contrast, bring in the Dr. Peach Martin's Bleed Proof White. Again, link in the description if you're looking for this particular product. A lot of people ask, what the heck is this? Is it watercolor? Is it gouache? Is it acrylic? It is none of the above. It is a water-based kind of thing of its own. It dries matte like a watercolor, unlike acrylic. It's slightly more opaque than gouache. So it's something in between, like a little bit higher opacity than gouache, like an acrylic, but not quite shiny. You know, it doesn't dry shiny like acrylic. So I'm just going to add a few to kind of mimic this up here. A few details in white, but I do have to water this down a little bit. Otherwise it's not going to flow. So you can add water to it. You don't want to add too much because that will mess with the opacity. It'll become more transparent and give off more of a gray tone than white. So I am going to just put a few white branches down here below, and then we're going to put a few white leaves down below. But it could have certainly been done at the stage before without this. It looked lovely. But I like to go the extra mile. Sometimes that doesn't always work out. It's a little too much. But I always like to say when you're learning, if you haven't gone too far, how do you know you've gone far enough? Because once you go too far a number of times, then you kind of know where the line is, but you have to get there first. And a lot of people stop short of the line and they don't get to kind of the maximum potential. And then a lot of people go over the line. And that line can be different for every person. All right, one more side, add a few leaves, and then we're done. We'll take off our tape so we can kind of see those nice clean edges. So I want to thank you all for painting with me, as always. I also want to do a special shout out to my super thanks contributors. I had a few last week, And I always want to give special shout out to you. You know who you are. You're fabulous. Super thanks is a way to contribute to my channel and just support me. And I am so, so grateful to those who are able to do so. And just so grateful for all of you for watching, honestly, coming back each week and watching, for those of you who are regulars. So thank you. You keep me going, keep me painting every day. All right, there we go. So let's close up our bottle here. I'm going to take off my clips. We're going to take off our tape. We're going to be gentle because this is straight up good old masking tape. Nothing special about this particular tape. So it's a little stronger than the average. You can heat it up with your blow dryer or your heat gun and it'll come right off, which I might have to do, especially if it's on there for a long time sometimes. You can see this stuff is tough. You can definitely get, I have painter's tape. I had packed it up for a class that is a little lower tackiness, but this is just what I had sitting near my table. There we go. Look at that fun little whimsical sunrise, giving off those hot and cool vibes. Nice warm glow, beautiful, thank you. Cool, dark, icy, chilly color palette to represent kind of what's going on in my world today. So let's cross our fingers that spring really does show up and we get some warmer temperatures. Just asking for something in the high 50s without rain or wind. That's all I'm looking for these days. Not too much to ask, right, for April? All right, y'all, take care. Happy painting. Thank you, super thanks, contributors. Thank you to all of those who comment, like, subscribe. You guys are the best, and I will see you for our next watercolor journal page very soon. Take care, y'all. Happy painting.